My name is Alyssa, and at 34 years old, I never imagined my father would betray me so completely. When he called yesterday with that strange urgency in his voice saying, "Come alone, no husband," something felt wrong. During the drive to his house, I kept remembering how supportive he seemed at my wedding to Marcus just 2 years ago. Now, pulling into his driveway, I saw an unfamiliar luxury car parked there. Opening the door, I found my father sitting with a stranger in an expensive suit, a manila folder labeled Alyssa Marie Henderson, between them. Before I share what happened next, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming. Trust me, what unfolded in that living room will shock you as much as it shocked me. My father rose from his leather armchair with that familiar warm smile that had comforted me through countless childhood scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks. "Come in, sweetheart," he said, gesturing to the man beside him. "This is Mr. Thompson, an old family friend. He's been helping me with some important paperwork." Thompson stood extending a manicured hand. His grip was firm but cold, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. I'd heard every name from my father's circle over the years, but Thompson was new. The way he studied me like he was calculating something made my skin crawl. Dad disappeared into the kitchen and returned with my favorite childhood comfort drink, Earl Grey with honey served in Mom's china teacup, the one with tiny roses painted along the rim. "Remember how you used to insist on using this exact cup for your tea parties?" he chuckled, settling back into his chair. "You'd line up all your stuffed animals and serve them imaginary scones." The nostalgia felt forced, like he was reading from a script. But I played along, sipping the familiar sweetness while he launched into what seemed like a greatest hits compilation of my achievements. My valedictorian speech at Roosevelt High, the full scholarship to Stanford, the MBA that led to founding my own marketing firm. He even brought up the Gardner Industries campaign that had put my company on the map. Thompson nodded along, occasionally glancing at his Patek Philippe watch. "Very impressive, Ms. Henderson. Your father must be incredibly proud." He shuffled some papers in that manila folder, and I caught glimpses of legal letterhead and official seals. "Oh, I am," Dad said quickly. Too quickly. "And Marcus, what a catch. Successful architect, good family, treats you like a queen. Your mother would have been so happy to see you settled with someone like him." The mention of Mom made my chest tighten. She'd been gone 5 years now, taken by a swift and merciless pancreatic cancer that gave us barely 2 months from diagnosis to goodbye. Dad's fingers started that nervous tap against his armrest, the same tell he'd had since I was a kid. It meant he was about to ask for something. "Your mother and I, we always wanted to protect the family legacy," he continued, his gaze dropping to the folder. "Make sure everything was handled properly for the next generation." Thompson cleared his throat. "Speaking of family, your father mentioned your brother Jake couldn't make it today. Traveling for business, I understand." That was odd. Jake hadn't mentioned any trips when we'd texted last week about planning Dad's upcoming birthday dinner. "Yeah, Dubai deal," Dad said, waving his hand vaguely. "You know Jake always chasing the next big opportunity." I did know Jake. My older brother by 2 years had always been the dreamer, the schemer, the one with grand plans that somehow never quite materialized. But Dubai seemed ambitious even for him. Dad shifted in his seat, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. "I'm getting older, Alyssa. Been thinking a lot lately about setting things right. Making sure everything's in order. The lake house came up next because of course it did. That beautiful property in Tahoe where we'd spent every summer of my childhood. Mom teaching me to swim off the dock while Dad and Jake fished for rainbow trout. Evening barbecues where the smell of grilled corn mixed with pine and clear mountain air. Grandmother's special spot on the wraparound porch, where she'd read me stories until the fireflies came out. Blood is thicker than water," Dad said, using that phrase he'd repeated throughout our childhood whenever Jake and I fought. "Family takes care of family. That's what your grandmother always said." Thompson had been silent for several minutes, just watching our exchange with those calculating eyes. Finally, he reached for the folder. "Mr. Henderson, perhaps we should discuss the matter at hand. Time is somewhat of the essence here." Dad's tapping intensified. Right? Of course. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Alyssa, honey, there's something important we need to discuss. Something about your grandmother's estate. My grandmother had passed 3 years ago at 92 sharp as a tack until the very end. She'd been the matriarch of our family, building her fortune through smart investments and an uncanny ability to predict market trends. I'd been the executor of her will, or so I'd thought. Everything had been settled, distributed according to her wishes. Jake got his share, I got mine. Dad had already inherited his portion when Grandpa died. Thompson pulled out a thick stack of documents. Miss Henderson, what do you know about the Hartley Family Trust? The Hartley Family Trust. I knew it well. Grandmother had established it decades ago with Grandpa, designed to protect and grow the family wealth for future generations. But that had all been handled. It's worth approximately $4.2 million, Thompson continued, spreading out financial statements across the coffee table, including the lake house, several commercial properties in Sacramento, and a substantial investment portfolio. I know all this, I said slowly. Grandmother's estate was distributed according to her will. I handled everything myself. Dad and Thompson exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. That's what we need to discuss, Dad said. There have been some irregularities discovered. Things that weren't apparent during the initial settlement. Thompson pulled out a document with an official seal that looked fresh enough to smudge. This is your grandmother's final will, he said, sliding it toward me. Dated exactly 1 month before her passing. I picked up the paper, comparing it to my memory of the original I'd filed 3 years ago. The letterhead was identical, but something felt off. According to this version, Grandmother had experienced a change of heart about the distribution of her assets. Your grandmother was a very thoughtful woman, Thompson explained in that smooth lawyer voice that probably charged $500 an hour. In her final weeks, she became concerned about the equitable distribution of her estate. Dad leaned forward, his expression grave. Jake's had some difficulties, sweetheart. Some financial setbacks we didn't want to burden you with. Thompson produced another set of papers. Your brother has accumulated substantial gambling debts. $800,000 to be precise. There are people who aren't particularly patient about collecting. The number hit me like cold water. 800,000. How was that even possible? Jake had always been impulsive, sure, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. And my construction business. Dad added, his voice dropping. The pandemic hit us hard. We're facing bankruptcy if I can't secure capital in the next month. I've been trying to protect you from all this, honey. You've got your own life, your successful business. Then came the kicker. Dad had apparently been supporting his new girlfriend, Brenda, a woman I'd met exactly twice at family dinners. She's 42, starting over after a difficult divorce, Dad explained. Her ex left her with nothing. I couldn't just abandon her. Thompson shuffled more papers, pulling out financial assessments of Marcus's architectural firm. Your husband's practice is doing exceptionally well. The Morrison Building project alone netted $2.3 million in profits last year. You're comfortable, more than comfortable. The implication hung heavy in the air. I had enough. More than enough. Why shouldn't I help the family members who were struggling? Your grandmother would have wanted the family taken care of, Dad said, using that soft voice he'd employed when explaining why we had to put our dog Murphy to sleep when I was 12. She just didn't have time to properly document her final wishes. Thompson pushed a set of papers toward me. These documents would clarify your understanding of the situation. Acknowledge that the previous will distribution may have been based on incomplete information. I started reading carefully, my MBA training kicking in as I parsed through the legal language. Hidden in the subclauses and addendums was essentially a transfer of my entire inheritance to a new trust controlled by my father. We want to handle this within the family, Dad said quickly when he saw me frowning. No need for outside lawyers to get involved. They'd just eat up the estate with fees and create conflict. You know how these things can tear families apart, Thompson added. If this goes to court, it could take years to resolve. The legal fees alone would consume a substantial portion of the estate. Better to settle it amicably now. But as I continued reading, things weren't adding up. The signature on this new will looked shaky, uncertain. Grandmother had arthritis, yes, but she'd maintained her elegant penmanship until the end. I'd seen her sign birthday cards just weeks before she died. "Dad," I said slowly, "this signature doesn't look right." His tapping became almost frantic. "She was 92, Alyssa. Her hands weren't as steady. You weren't there those final weeks as much as Jake and I were." That stung because it held a grain of truth. I'd been in Singapore closing a major deal for my company. I'd made it back for the last 3 days holding her hand as she slipped away, but Jake and Dad had been there longer. "Marcus doesn't need to know about any of this," Dad added, which sent another red flag shooting up. "This is family business. Henderson family business. No need to involve outsiders." Thompson was already pushing a pen toward me. "If you could just sign here, and initial here, we can put this whole unpleasant matter behind us." But I wasn't the naive girl who'd once believed her father hung the moon. I was a successful businesswoman who'd learned to spot a con from across a boardroom. And this, whatever this was, reeked of deception. The universe has a twisted sense of timing. Just as I was about to confront them about the discrepancies, the front door burst open and Jake walked in, all 6 feet 2 inches of false surprise and rehearsed charm. "Alyssa, wow, didn't expect to see you here," he said. But his eyes went straight to Dad and Thompson, a quick check-in that told me everything I needed to know about his supposed surprise. He was wearing a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, which was interesting for someone allegedly drowning in gambling debt. His shoes alone were worth $2,000. I knew because Marcus had looked at the same pair last month. "Jake," I said evenly, "Dad mentioned you were in Dubai." His laugh was too loud, too quick. "Change of plans." Deal fell through. He moved to hug me, and I caught a whiff of expensive cologne and something else, champagne maybe. Been celebrating an early failure. He settled into Mom's favorite chair, the one Dad had never let anyone else sit in after she died, and launched into his sob story without preamble. "It's been rough, sis. Really rough. The economy, bad investments, you know how it is." No, I wanted to say I don't know how it is to gamble away $800,000, but I kept quiet watching the performance unfold. "The twins are starting to think about college," he continued, referring to his 17-year-old daughters. "Skylar wants to go to Yale. Can you imagine Yale? And Emma's got her heart set on medical school eventually. How am I supposed to tell them their futures are gone because their dad made some mistakes? You were always grandmother's favorite," he added. And there it was, the old resentment that had simmered since childhood. "She taught you about the stocks, took you to those fancy lunches at the club. I got fishing trips with Dad, while you got private time with her and her fortune." Dad nodded along supportively. "Your grandmother did show certain preferences," he agreed. "Natural, perhaps, but not entirely fair to Jake." I noticed Jake's wrist as he gestured a new Rolex Daytona catching the light. That was a $50,000 watch. My eyes swept the room with fresh perspective, cataloging the changes since my last visit. Mom's pictures, which had adorned every surface, were gone. In their place were photos of Dad and Brenda smiling on a beach in Santorini, raising glasses at what looked like a New Year's party at the Ritz, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. "I need to use the restroom," I announced, standing abruptly. "Down the hall, third door," Dad said, though I knew perfectly well where it was. But I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to Mom's former office now, clearly Brenda's domain, based on the designer handbags and shoes visible through the partially open closet door. The desk where Mom used to grade papers, she'd been an English teacher before retirement, was covered with travel brochures for luxury cruises and 5-star resorts. A voice drifted from the living room. "Jake not quite quiet enough, saying I told you she'd need more convincing. We should have stuck to the original plan." Thompson's response was muffled, but Dad's came through clear. "She'll sign. She's always been the good daughter. She won't let the family fall apart." I slipped into Dad's study instead, my heart pounding as I accessed his computer. He still used Mom's birthday as his password, a detail that would have been touching if he weren't trying to swindle me. His email was open, and what I found there made my blood run cold. Chains of messages between Dad, Jake, and Thompson dating back 8 months. The subject lines alone told a story of careful planning and calculated betrayal. Grandmother's estate opportunity. Timeline for implementation. Alyssa strategy. I opened the most recent thread. Thompson had written, "The dementia angle is our strongest play. If she fights, we can claim the old lady wasn't competent for the last 2 years. I have a doctor who'll testify for the right price." Jake's response, "Just make sure Alyssa doesn't get suspicious. She's smart, but she trusts Dad. That's our advantage." Dad's contribution made me want to throw up. She won't fight too hard. Alyssa always wants everyone to be happy. It's her weakness. I quickly forwarded the entire thread to my personal email, and Marcus's then dug deeper. Bank statements showed Dad's supposed bankruptcy was a lie. He had $3.7 million in offshore accounts in the Caymans. Jake's gambling debts. Paid off 6 months ago by Dad himself according to a wire transfer receipt. But the real shock came in a folder labeled "B Investment." Brenda wasn't Dad's girlfriend. She was his business partner in a real estate development scheme. They'd been buying up properties together for 3 years since before Mom even got sick. Photos showed them at groundbreaking ceremonies, signing contracts, shaking hands with investors. In one dated just 2 months after Mom's funeral, they were toasting with champagne at a property closing. My phone buzzed. Marcus texting to check in. I sent him a quick message, learning some hard truths about family. "Stand by? Might need lawyer. Love you." His response was immediate. "Already called David from law school. He's on standby. Whatever you need. Stay strong." I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly closed everything, slipping out of the study, just as Jennifer, Jake's wife, appeared with their twins in tow. Aunt Alyssa, the girls chorused in voices that suggested coaching. Jennifer air-kissed my cheek, and I noticed her new Birkin bag. That was a $25,000 purse on a supposed budget crisis. "We were just in the neighborhood," Jennifer said brightly. "Thought we'd stop by to see Grandpa. Girls, tell your aunt about your college plans." The twins launched into synchronized speeches about their dreams and aspirations, heavy emphasis on how expensive it all would be while Jennifer dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. "We're just trying to keep things normal for them," she said. "Not let them know how dire things really are. Children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes." Skylar, the more observant twin, kept glancing at her phone. At one point, I saw her screen a text from Jake saying, "Remember what we practiced? Guilt trip maximum." The whole family was in on it. Every single one of them. We returned to the living room where Dad and Jake had spread out more documents, creating an impressive display of legal urgency. Thompson was on his phone, occasionally muttering about deadlines and filing requirements. "The family reunion is next month," Jake mentioned casually. "Already told everyone you're helping with the trust redistribution. They're all so grateful, sis. Cousin Marie especially, since her son needs that surgery." This was news to me. "What surgery?" "Oh, didn't Dad tell you? Little Tommy needs a heart procedure. Experimental thing not covered by insurance. We thought maybe some of the trust could help. I mean, what good is family money if it doesn't help family, right? I knew Cousin Marie. I'd had lunch with her last month. Tommy was perfectly healthy, had just made the varsity soccer team. The manipulation was so thick I could barely breathe. They'd constructed an entire alternate reality where everyone was desperate, and I was the selfish princess hoarding the family fortune." Thompson checked his watch again this time, making sure I saw him do it. "Miss Henderson, I have a filing deadline with the court. If we're going to resolve this amicably, I need your signature within the next 24 hours. After that, we'll have to proceed with the contested will filing." Dad reached over and took my hand, his grip firm and slightly desperate. "Sweetheart, I know this is a lot to process, but we're family. We take care of each other. Your mother would want you to help Jake and the girls. She would want you to keep the family together." Using Mom's memory as manipulation was the final straw, but I kept my face neutral. "I need time to think about this," I said, pulling my hand away. Jake's face darkened. "Time, Alyssa. I have people calling me daily. These aren't patient people. They don't care that you need time to think. Are you threatening me, Jake?" He backed down slightly. No, I'm just saying this is urgent. We can't wait for you to feel comfortable while Dad loses everything he built and my daughters lose their futures. Thompson pulled out another document. Perhaps this will help clarify things. It's a competency evaluation of your grandmother from 2 years before her death. Some concerning signs of dementia, memory lapses, confusion about financial matters. I looked at the signature. Dr. Harold Brennan. I didn't recognize the name, but I memorized it for later investigation. If we have to use this in court, Thompson continued, it would suggest that any will signed in the last 2 years of her life could be invalid, including the one you executed. That could freeze the entire estate for years. Dad squeezed my shoulder. We don't want that, honey. Nobody wants that. Just sign the papers, keep the family together, and everyone wins. Jennifer chose that moment to have Skylar show me her Yale application essay on her phone. It was about overcoming financial adversity with family support. The manipulation was almost artistic in its coordination. I stood up, my decision made. I need 24 hours. This is a lot to process, and I want to review everything carefully. Thompson frowned. 24 hours. Not a minute more. After that, we file the contested will and everything becomes public. Your business reputation, Marcus's firm, it could all be affected by a messy family legal battle. The threat was clear. Sign, or we'll destroy your life along with your inheritance. I gathered my purse, kissing Dad on the cheek like nothing was wrong. I'll be in touch, I said. Jake walked me to the door, his hand on my elbow just a bit too tight. Don't overthink this, sis. Sometimes the smart choice and the right choice aren't the same thing. But family is forever. As I drove away, I saw them all gathering at the window watching my departure, like vultures eyeing wounded prey. They thought they had me cornered. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The drive home gave me 20 minutes to process the betrayal and plan my response. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd already made 3 crucial phone calls. Marcus met me at the door with a glass of wine, and David Choi, my law school roommate turned estate attorney extraordinaire. They played you perfectly, David said after reviewing the photos I'd taken of the documents. Almost. This signature is definitely forged. I'd stake my reputation on it. And this Dr. Brennan, who supposedly evaluated your grandmother, he lost his license in 2018 for falsifying medical records. Marcus had been busy too. I called in a favor with my client who runs a private investigation firm, he said. They're already digging into Thompson, your father's finances, and this Brenda person. Within 3 hours, we'd assembled a war room in my home office. David had called in a forensic accountant, a document examiner, and somehow managed to track down Patricia Winters, my grandmother's original attorney, who'd retired to Napa Valley. Patricia's video call was enlightening. Your grandmother was sharp as a tack until the day she died, she said firmly. I visited her a week before she passed. We discussed her investments, played chess, and she beat me 3 games out of 5. Any suggestion of dementia is absolute nonsense. She also had something else, backup copies of every document my grandmother had ever signed, including a video will reading that grandmother had insisted on recording, just in case she'd said at the time. Sometimes family gets funny about money. In the video, grandmother looked directly at the camera and said, "To my granddaughter, Alyssa, I leave the bulk of my estate not because she's my favorite, though she is, but because she's the only one I trust to honor what I've built. Jake is too impulsive, and my son William, well, he's too easily influenced by whoever shares his bed." The private investigator, a former FBI agent named Sandra Kim, had results within hours. Thompson isn't even his real name. It's Garrett Mills. He was disbarred in Nevada, California, and Oregon for elder financial abuse. He's got a pattern. Finds families with substantial estates and elderly members, creates conflict, then offers to resolve it for a cut. She pulled up financial records that made my stomach turn. Your father started transferring money from your grandmother's accounts 2 years before she died. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Jake's been in on it from the beginning. Those gambling debts. They're real, but they were from 5 years ago. Your father paid them off to keep Jake loyal to his plan. The real shock came when Sandra uncovered Brenda's history. Real name, Brenda Kovac. She's run this same scam in 3 states. She targets widowed men with substantial assets, becomes their girlfriend, then business partner, then beneficiary. Your father's her 4th mark. But you want to know the really sick part, Sandra asked. She and Thompson/Mills are married. Have been for 15 years. This is their family business, destroying other families. Marcus had been pacing his architect's mind, already building our counterattack. We need them to confess. On tape. Otherwise, it's our word against theirs. I smiled for the first time since leaving Dad's house. Leave that to me. I learned from the best, after all. Grandmother didn't just teach me about stocks. She taught me about strategy. David raised his wine glass. Your grandmother sounds like she was a force of nature. She was, I agreed. And tomorrow I'm going to make her proud. We spent the rest of the night preparing. David drafted real legal documents that looked like agreements, but actually said nothing. Sandra provided miniature recording devices that looked like jewelry. Marcus practiced his part. He'd be waiting in the car, ready to call police if needed. Patricia had one more gift. Your grandmother left something in my keeping. She said to give it to you only if your father ever tried to contest the will. She handed me a sealed envelope through the screen. It's in my assistant's hands. She'll drive it down tonight. 4 hours later, I held a letter in grandmother's handwriting. My dearest Alyssa, it began. If you're reading this, your father has shown his true colors. I've known about his greed for years, but hoped he'd choose family over money. Since he hasn't known this, I've kept records of everything. Check the safe deposit box at Wells Fargo on Main. Box 572. The key is in your mother's jewelry box, inside the locket I gave her for her 40th birthday. Your father doesn't know about any of this. Use it to protect yourself and the legacy I'm leaving you. Remember, sweetness wolves sometimes wear familiar faces. Love always, grandmother. Marcus drove me to my childhood home at midnight. The spare key was still under the fake rock where it had always been. I slipped inside, retrieved the locket from Mom's jewelry box that Dad had stuffed in the attic, and found the key exactly where grandmother said it would be. The next morning before my meeting with Dad, I visited the bank. The safe deposit box contained everything: records of Dad's embezzlement, documentation of Jake's debts, and Dad's payments. Even photos of Brenda with her previous marks. Grandmother had hired her own investigator years ago. There was also a letter to me. Not about the money or the betrayal, but about love and forgiveness and strength. She wrote about watching me grow from a shy little girl into a formidable woman. She wrote about knowing I'd face this challenge and believing I'd handle it with grace. She wrote about the real inheritance she was leaving me, not money, but the knowledge of who I could trust and the strength to stand alone when necessary. I made copies of everything, sent them to David, and prepared for the performance of my life. Walking back into Dad's house that afternoon, I was wearing a Wire 3 recording devices and a smile that would have made grandmother proud. The whole family was there. Dad, Jake, Jennifer, the twins, Brenda and Thompson, or Mills, or whatever his real name was. They'd set the scene perfectly. Documents spread across the dining room table, multiple pens ready, even a notary they'd brought in to make everything official. The urgency in the air was palpable, manufactured but effective. Alyssa, Dad said, standing to embrace me. I'm so glad you're here. We can put this whole mess behind us and move forward as a family. I sat down, picked up the pen, and pretended to read through the documents one more time. Then I started asking questions, innocent-sounding ones designed to make them comfortable enough to talk. So if I sign this, everyone's debts are covered. Jake nearly jumped out of his seat with eagerness. Yes, everything. The gambling debts, Dad's business, the girls' college funds, even Cousin Marie's son's surgery. The surgery that doesn't exist, I asked casually. The room went still. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Jake recovered first, his laugh forced and brittle. What do you mean? Of course it exists. Tommy needs that heart procedure. I pulled out my phone, swiping to a photo from Cousin Marie's Instagram posted yesterday. Tommy scoring the winning goal at his soccer match. Looks pretty healthy to me, I said, turning the screen toward them. Amazing what kids with heart conditions can do these days. Dad's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine before landing on indignation. You've been checking up on us. On family, no, Dad. I've been discovering how many lies you're willing to tell to steal my inheritance. I set the phone down and looked at each of them in turn. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate? That I'd just hand over $4.2 million because you asked nicely? Thompson, Mills cleared his throat. Miss Henderson, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. No, Mr. Mills, I said, emphasizing his real name. Or should I say Garrett? Currently wanted for elder fraud in 3 states, I understand perfectly. His face went white, but Brenda jumped in all fake concern and sweetness. Alyssa, dear, I don't know what you think you found, but your father and I only want what's best for the family. Your family, I asked. You mean your husband sitting right there pretending to be a lawyer? Or your 3 previous marks in Phoenix, Denver, and Seattle? Howard Morrison, James Chen, and Richard Blackwood. All widowers, all with substantial estates, all mysteriously convinced to sign over their assets before you disappeared. Dad stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. You don't know what you're talking about. Brenda loves me. We're building something together. Building, you mean like the $3.7 million you have hidden in the Cayman Islands. The construction business bankruptcy that's somehow still landing million-dollar contracts. Or maybe the 8 months of emails planning exactly how to manipulate me into signing over my inheritance. Jake grabbed the documents from the table. You went through Dad's computer, that's invasion of privacy. And forging grandmother's will isn't. I pulled out the forensic analyst's report. This signature is fake. The witness signatures are fake. Dr. Brennan, who supposedly diagnosed her with dementia, lost his license before he allegedly examined her. Every single document you've shown me is fraudulent. Jennifer started crying, mascara running in perfect lines down her cheeks. Think of the children, Alyssa. Your nieces. They don't deserve to suffer. Suffer, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Skylar's wearing $800 shoes. Emma's backpack costs more than most people's rent. You're carrying a $25,000 purse while claiming poverty. Which one of you wants to explain that the twins had the grace to look ashamed, both suddenly very interested in their phones? Thompson Mills tried to regain control. These are serious accusations, Miss Henderson. If you're recording this conversation, I am, I confirmed cheerfully. Multiple devices, actually. All legal in this state, as long as one party consents, which I do. And you've all given me quite the performance. Dad admitting to the embezzlement, Jake confessing to the gambling debts you already paid Jennifer, acknowledging the fraud. Even you, Mr. Mills, confirming your false identity. Dad's nervous tapping had become full-blown shaking. Alyssa, sweetheart, we're family. Whatever you think happened, we can work this out. No need for recordings or lawyers, or any of this unpleasantness. Family. I stood up, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Family doesn't steal from dying grandmothers. Family doesn't forge wills. Family doesn't plan for 8 months to rob their own daughter. You stopped being my family the moment you decided money was more important than love. Jake stepped toward me. His size meant to be intimidating. You can't prove any of this. It's your word against ours. Actually, I can. I pulled out grandmother's letter, holding it up for them to see. She knew. She knew everything. She documented it all. Every transfer, every lie, every betrayal. She hired investigators, kept records, and left me everything I need to not just prove your fraud, but to have you all arrested. Brenda tried to run, but I'd expected that. Marcus and David were waiting outside with Sandra and 2 police officers she'd called. They'd been listening to everything through the wire I was wearing. As Brenda reached the door, she ran straight into Detective Morris and Sandra's contact from the Financial Crimes Unit, Mrs. Kovac Mills, he said pleasantly. We've been looking for you. Something about 3 outstanding warrants. Thompson Mills tried to bluster his way out. I want a lawyer. A real one this time. The detective smiled. Absolutely. You'll need one. Fraud, elder, abuse, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy. That's just a start. Dad collapsed into his chair, suddenly looking far older than his 68 years. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered. It started small. Just a few thousand here and there. Brenda said Mom would never notice. So you admit, Brenda orchestrated this? I asked, making sure the recording caught everything. She had it all planned, he said, defeated. Showed me how much money was just sitting there not being used. Said old people didn't need that much. Said you were successful enough, didn't need inheritance. Jake needed it more. Jake turned on Dad immediately. Don't put this on me. It was your idea to forge the will. Your idea to bribe the doctor. Actually, Jennifer said, her fake tears gone replaced by cold calculation. It was my idea to involve the girls. Sympathy factor. Alyssa always was a sucker for family guilt. The twins looked at their mother in horror. Mom Skylar said, You used us. Everyone uses everyone, Sweetie Jennifer replied with a shrug. Welcome to the real world. Detective Morrison nodded to his partner. I think we've heard enough. He proceeded to arrest them all, reading rights as my childhood home became a crime scene. Dad looked at me as they cuffed him. I'm your father. How could you do this, the same way you did it to grandmother, I replied. Deliberately, methodically, and without a single regret. As they led him away, he tried one more time. Your mother would be ashamed of you. Marcus had come inside by then, his arm around me as I watched my father placed in the police car. No, I said quietly. She'd be ashamed of you. She warned me, you know. Left journals I found today. She knew what you were, but hoped you'd choose better. Just like grandmother did. Jake was yelling about lawyers and lawsuits as they arrested him. Jennifer maintained her ice queen composure until they mentioned her assets would be frozen pending investigation. Then she crumbled, begging me to think of the twins. The twins will be fine, I assured her. They're 17, not 7, and they'll learn what happens when you choose greed over family. Thompson Mills went quietly, probably calculating his chances of cutting a deal. Brenda fought screaming about persecution and innocence until Detective Morrison mentioned the other 3 states where she was wanted. In the end, only the twins remained in the house with me. Emma was crying quietly. Skylar looked at me with something like respect. We didn't know, Skylar said. Not all of it. We knew Mom and Dad were planning something, but not this. I believed her. You two are welcome in my life always. But your parents made their choices. Now they'll face the consequences. David had been documenting everything, building our civil case alongside the criminal one. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. You didn't just protect her legacy, you honored it. Sandra Kim approached with a satisfied smile. Best case I've worked in years. Multi-state fraud ring, family drama, sweet justice. They'll all do time. Your father and brother are looking at 5 to 10. Brenda and her husband, with the other warrants, probably 15 to 20. That night, Marcus held me as I finally let myself cry. Not for the family I'd lost. They'd been gone the moment they chose greed. But for the family, I'd thought I had the illusion of love and loyalty that had been shattered. Patricia Winters called the next morning. She'd been watching the news coverage. Your grandmother knew this day might come, she said. That's why she prepared you so well. Not just with evidence, but with strength. She always said you had steel in your spine. Today you proved it. The news spread through our extended family like wildfire. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Most were shocked. Some were skeptical. A few, like Cousin Marie, were horrified to learn they'd been used as props in Dad's con game. I can't believe they used Tommy's name, Marie said when we finally talked. Using a child in their sick scheme. What kind of people do that? Desperate ones, I replied. Greedy ones. People who've forgotten what family really means. The family reunion that Jake had threatened me with became an impromptu support gathering. Instead of announcing my supposed generosity with redistributed funds, relatives gathered to process the betrayal and offer support. Great-Aunt Dorothy, grandmother's sister who'd flown in from Boston, took my hands in her weathered ones. Your grandmother suspected for years, she said, but she hoped William would prove her wrong. She loved him despite his flaws. But she loved you more because you reminded her of herself strong, smart, and incorruptible. The legal proceedings moved quickly. With the recordings and documented evidence, the prosecution had an airtight case. Dad's lawyer, a real one this time, advised him to take a plea deal. 5 years minimum security. 3 with good behavior. Jake, facing additional charges for threatening me, got 7 years. Jennifer tried to play the victim card until prosecutors showed evidence of her moving assets to her mother's name the day before my confrontation. She'd known exactly what was happening and had tried to protect her own interests. 3 years and restitution. Thompson, Mills, or Garrett faced federal charges due to the multi-state nature of his crimes. 15 years, no parole for 10. Brenda, with her previous warrants and established pattern, got 20 years. The judge called her a predator who specifically targeted vulnerable elderly people and their families. During the sentencing, Dad tried to speak to me. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on his diminished frame. "I'm sorry," he said, but his eyes said he was only sorry he got caught. Jake wrote me a letter from prison 6 months later. It was full of justifications and blame, mostly directed at Dad and Brenda. He never once took real responsibility. I didn't respond. Jennifer divorced Jake while he was in prison, trying to salvage what she could of her reputation. She moved to Texas with the twins, who both got into college on their own merits, not with stolen money. Skylar sent me a graduation announcement 3 years later with a note. "Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like." The house where I'd grown up was sold to pay legal fees and restitution. I didn't attend the sale. That house had stopped being home the day I discovered the depth of their betrayal. Marcus and I used part of grandmother's inheritance to establish the Helen Hartley Foundation for Elder Protection. We fund legal services for seniors facing financial exploitation and education programs about elder fraud. In the first year alone, we helped prosecute 12 cases of family financial abuse. Patricia Winters became a regular advisor to the foundation. She often spoke about grandmother at our events. Helen Hartley was brilliant with money, she'd say, but her greatest gift was seeing people clearly. She knew who to trust and who to watch. She protected her legacy not with locks and lawyers, but with love given to the right person. I discovered more of Mom's journals as I cleaned out the family home. One entry written just months before her diagnosis haunted me. "William's greed will destroy this family after I'm gone. I've tried to temper it, but Brenda feeds it. I fear for Alyssa. She'll have to be stronger than she knows she is. But I believe in her. She has mother's spine and my heart. She'll survive what's coming." She'd known. They'd both known. And they'd prepared me not by warning me directly, but by teaching me to be strong enough to face it when it came. 3 years after the arrests, I got a call from the prison. Dad had suffered a heart attack. He was asking for me. I sat with that request for 2 days before deciding to go. He looked small in the hospital bed, hooked to monitors and struggling to breathe. The man who'd once seemed larger than life, who taught me to ride a bike and walked me down the aisle, was just a frail human who'd chosen wrong at every turn. "I never meant to hurt you," he wheezed. "Yes, you did," I replied calmly. "You meant to take everything from me. You just didn't mean to get caught." He cried then, whether from genuine remorse or continued self-pity, I couldn't tell. "Maybe it didn't matter. I forgive you," I said, and meant it. Not for you, but for me. I forgive you so I can let this go and live my life free from the weight of your choices. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean you're welcome back in my life. I left the hospital and never saw him again. He died 2 months later. Jake was allowed to attend the funeral under guard. We stood on opposite sides of the grave, strangers who shared DNA and nothing else. The lake house, which had been tied up in legal proceedings, was finally released to me. Marcus and I spent a summer renovating it, turning it back into the warm, welcoming place of my childhood memories. We kept grandmother's reading chair on the porch and Mom's garden blooming with the flowers she'd loved. Last 4th of July, we hosted a gathering there. Not of the family I'd been born into, but the family I'd chosen. David and his wife, Sandra Kim, and her partner, Patricia Winters, who'd become like a grandmother to me. The twins came too now in their 20s and working to be better than their parents. As fireworks lit up the lake, Marcus handed me a small box. Inside was a locket similar to the one grandmother had given Mom. On one side was a photo of grandmother, on the other, a photo of our 6-month-old daughter, Helena, named for the woman who'd saved us even from beyond the grave. "Your grandmother and mother would be so proud," Patricia said, watching Helena sleep in my arms. "You've broken the cycle. You've shown that family isn't about blood or money. It's about choice. And you chose integrity." That night I sat on grandmother's spot on the porch, Helena peaceful against my chest, and felt the presence of the women who'd come before me. They'd known betrayal was coming and armed me not with warnings that might not have been believed, but with strength, wisdom, and unshakable values. Looking back now, 5 years after that phone call that changed everything, I can see the journey clearly. The pain of discovering that the people who were supposed to love me most saw me only as a bank account to raid. The strength it took to stand up to them when every instinct born from childhood said to keep the peace. The courage required to choose justice over false harmony. But mostly I see the liberation. There's a peculiar freedom in having your worst fears realized and surviving them. The family I'd tried so hard to please, whose approval I'd sought, whose love I'd craved, had never really existed. They were performances, roles played for benefit masks worn until the money got big enough to drop them. The real family, the one grandmother saw and Mom hoped for, was the one I built afterward. Marcus, who stood by me when things got ugly, who never once suggested I should have just given them the money to avoid drama. Our daughter Helena, now walking and talking, who will grow up knowing that love isn't transactional. The friends who became siblings by choice, not chance. I still get letters sometimes. Dad's former neighbors who can't believe what happened. Relatives who think I should have handled it privately. Even strangers who've read about the case and want to share their own stories of family financial betrayal. To all of them, I say the same thing. Keeping family secrets only protects the guilty. Speaking truth, even when it shatters illusions, is the only way to heal. The foundation has grown beyond what we initially imagined. We've helped hundreds of elderly people protect their assets from predatory family members. We've educated thousands about the warning signs. We've lobbied for stronger laws protecting vulnerable seniors. Every person we help feels like a small victory for grandmother who saw this coming and made sure I'd be strong enough to not just survive it, but to help others survive it too. Sometimes I dream about the family gatherings that might have been. Holidays where Dad was just Dad, not a con artist. Birthdays where Jake was my annoying but beloved brother, not a co-conspirator. Moments where love was real, not performed for profit. But those dreams fade quickly, replaced by the reality of what I've built from the ashes of what they burned. Marcus asked me once if I regret going to that meeting, not just signing the papers and walking away. The question surprised me because the answer came so quickly and clearly. No, not for a single second. Because signing would have been betraying not just grandmother's trust, but everything she and Mom taught me about standing up for what's right. The money was never really the point. Yes, $4.2 million is significant, but it was the principle. They believed I was weak, that family loyalty would override my judgment, that I could be manipulated by guilt and false tears. They believed wrong. Every year on the anniversary of that confrontation, I visit grandmother's grave. I tell her about the Foundation's work, about Helena's latest adventures, about the life I've built on the foundation of strength she laid. I thank her for the lessons hidden in stock tips, the steel spine disguised as posture correction, the strategic thinking wrapped in chess games. But mostly, I thank her for seeing me clearly, for knowing that when tested, I wouldn't crumble, for trusting me not just with money, but with truth, for believing I was strong enough to lose a family and gain myself. The last time I visited Helena was with me. She placed a small hand on the headstone and said in her clear little voice, "Thank you, great-grandmother, for protecting Mommy." Even at 3, she understands on some level that love means protection, not predation. That's the real inheritance. Not the millions, though they've helped us help others. Not the properties, though the lake house has become a haven of real family gatherings. The inheritance is the knowledge that we can face the worst betrayals and emerge not bitter but better. That we can lose everything we thought we needed and discover we already have everything we truly need. That sometimes the family that raises you is just preparing you to recognize the family that chooses you. People often ask if I've forgiven them. Dad. Jake, Jennifer. Even Brenda and her husband. The answer is complex. I've released the anger because it was poisoning me, not them. I've accepted that they are who they are, limited by greed and devoid of real love. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean allowing them back into my life or Helena's. It means I've chosen peace over perpetual war, healing over hatred. But trust, that's earned, and they scorched that earth so thoroughly nothing will ever grow there again. And that's okay. Not all relationships are meant to be salvaged. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to let go completely. The steel spine grandmother gave me isn't about being hard or cold. It's about being strong enough to be soft with the right people. It's about having boundaries that protect your peace. It's about knowing that losing toxic people isn't loss at all, it's liberation. As I write this, Helena is playing in the same garden where grandmother taught me to plant seeds and wait patiently for growth. She's learning the same lessons I learned, that good things take time, that strong roots matter more than quick blooms, that sometimes you have to pull weeds to let flowers flourish. When she's older, I'll tell her this story. Not to make her suspicious of family, but to teach her to trust her instincts. To show her that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them the first time. To prove that standing alone with integrity beats standing together in deception. But most importantly, I'll teach her what grandmother taught me, that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the quality of love you give and receive. That family isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty. That sometimes the hardest choice and the right choice are the same choice. That's the legacy I'm building now. Not one of money, though the foundation will continue long after I'm gone. Not one of property, though the lake house will shelter future generations. But a legacy of truth, strength, and the courage to do right even when it costs everything. Because in the end, everything it cost was nothing compared to everything it gave me. Freedom, truth, real love, peace, and the knowledge that when grandmother and mom look down, they see that their faith in me wasn't misplaced. That's worth more than $4.2 million. That's worth everything. So to anyone facing their own family betrayal, wondering if they're strong enough to stand up to the people who were supposed to love them most, know this. You are stronger than you think. The pain is temporary, but the freedom is forever. The family you lose was never really yours, but the family you find or build will be. Trust yourself. Trust the voice inside that says something's wrong. Trust that you deserve better than manipulation disguised as love. And remember, sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what someone leaves you. It's who they help you become. If my story resonated with you, if you face similar betrayals, or know someone who has, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family harmony and personal integrity? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Please hit that like button if this story touched you, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more real-life stories of triumph over betrayal. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're not alone in facing family financial manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story, for being part of this healing journey, and for creating a community where truth is valued over comfortable lies. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't measured by what others can take from you, but by what no one can take away: your integrity, your strength, and your right to choose who deserves to be called family. Stay strong, trust yourself, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting what's rightfully yours.